Temperature out here. It's like 30 degrees. I don't know. Let's see. Yep. Well, below that. Ooh, 25. 25 degrees. It's like playing in the cooler. It is. Sounds weird. Anyway, set it down, take a little break. We got a itch to scratch over here. Yeah. Make it so I can hear real good. I've seen you for a long time, my old friend. So I told you to go away. I was a madman out of control. Start reading. Sounds good. Turn my volume. It's 55. It's pretty good. Hopefully didn't blow it. Let's see. You know what I mean? Below the mic. Greetings and welcome to the reading of The Dark Druid by Kenneth C. Flint, Chapter 22, Reunion. All right, have a drink. Make sure. Oh, yeah. Make my way. Okay, here we go. Chapter 22, Reunion. Ouch. Are you certain this is the way? Cowlight cried irritably as he pushed through some thorny underbrush, leading his none too eager horse. It's the way the dogs are going, Canute Royal called back. And stop complaining. It's not so bad as that. Cowlight looked after the little man who was striding ahead, guiding his own horse and finding his way beneath the low branches and through the narrow gaps in the brush with little difficulty. It's fine for you to talk, Cowlight said critically, pushing aside a branch that had thwacked him smartly in the neck. When you're no bigger than a hare yourself. We've got to keep close on Finn's trail, Canute Royal said, and move as quickly as we can. Well, Finn's trail has certainly been a wandering one, the Dark Warrior commented. It's my feeling that he must have been hurt by the puka creature we found. Or he might just be lost, suggested the Harper. Lost? Not Finn. Ow! Cowlight paused to pull a briar from his leg. That's like a thorned bush. He would have found his way back to us. We should just be grateful he's alive. There's been quite a horde of Druid's creatures hunting him by the signs. Still, Cowlight said with continued pessimism, if Finn were whole, he could have dealt with them. Maybe, the Harper agreed unhappily. Let's keep on. They pressed doggedly forward through the dense forest. It was a cool, overcast, humid day as the afternoon came on. Brought a fog with it, covering and filling the woods like a sodden blanket of gray wool. The vague shapes of the trees seemed to drift within the haze, and the weight of the damp air even muffled noise, so that the searchers moved in an eerie, silent world. Then, abruptly, Braun and Skilone, the two hounds, came to a stop. In the fog, the men and the horses nearly trod upon them before pulling up. The two dogs stood a moment, heads cocked, ears lifted, before heading off again. This time at a run. Harper and Warrior exchanged a surprised glance. "What's made them do that?" asked the little nut. "I think I know," said Cowlight. "Listen." Both listened intently. Through the clinging fog, through the heavy silence, faint, far but still distant, came a high, sharp, clattering sound. "What is that?" "A sound I know well enough," said Cowlight. "The clash of arms. Come on." They ran forward, Cowlight now unmindful of the tearing underbrush as he pursued the hounds. The sounds of battle grew louder, the rattle of weapons joined by men's voices, shrill battle shouts and cries of agony. "A large battle, I'd say," Cowlight remarked as he drew up with the Harper. Desperately fought, too. His long legs now carried him on ahead of the little man who laboringly kept up. He called after him complainingly, "Wait, you great lopping fool. This is too fast." "Quit your complaining," Cowlight called back, giving him a vengeful smile. "We're in a hurry, remember?" He pushed through a screen of hedge and vanished from the sight of the little man, muttering a curse under his breath. Canute Royal plunged through the same spot after him. He found himself suddenly on the edge of an abrupt drop down a steep slope. He staggered forward, teetering on the brink, and would have fallen had not a hand gripped him by the collar of his cloak and hauled him back. He recovered and whirled to find that the hand was Cowlight's. He, his horse, and the two hounds were lined up on the edge. "I'll not thank you for saving me after what you did," the Harper said angrily. "Why, you're never mind," Cowlight interrupted, pointing ahead. "Look there." They were on a ridge that overlooked a wide plain. The fog that had seemed to gather so quickly in the woods was much thinner there, revealing the circular shape of the area, the scattering of stones in the central mound with its house. Also visible was the pitched battle that was taking place just below the mound. Small groups seemed to be surrounded by a much larger force. Bodies already thickly covered the ground about the fighters. There were only some dozen of the encircled men still on their feet, and they were fighting valiantly to hold their own against some 40 warriors. "That larger band seems quite determined," said Canute Royal. "But the smaller one is doing them great damage," Cowlight replied, peering toward them. He grew suddenly excited. "And I think I know the reason for that. Look there, at the center atop the dolmen. Do you know that fighting style?" "I know." "That hair glowing like silver," the other said with like elation. "It's Finn. He's alive." "For the moment," said Cowlight. "Oh, for the moment," said Cowlight. "But he needs help." He turned to his horse and began to unstrap Finn's weapons from the saddle. "Finn might be wanting these." "All right. Awesome. This is going to be badass," he said, slipping them onto his back. He looked at Canute Royal and the two hounds. The three of you stay here with the horses. And with that, he was bounding down the slope toward the battle. Finn certainly was in sore need of help. The bulk of the remaining brothers were near to being overwhelmed, while one contingent of the largest and fiercest looking of the attackers, under the personal leadership of Lear, were directing their attention solely to eliminating their most troublesome opponent, to give him greater advantage over such unfair numbers. Finn had mounted to the flat stone that formed the tabletop roof of the dolmen. Here, he kept a precarious perch as he hopped back and forth, parrying attacks from every side, leaping over swings at his feet, knocking back sword and spear thrusts with his blade, kicking back foes who tried to clamber up. Hail victory! But his spear was gone, his shield buckling, and his sword badly bent from the continuous massive blows. So hotly engaged were the opposing groups that no one noted the warrior approaching until he had struck. Cowlight, under the unequal circumstances, bypassed the normal combat nicety of choosing and challenging a warrior to single combat. Instead, he just crashed into those massed about Finn, swinging out with sword and shield. He slammed one man from his way, hacked through a lifted spear or another, and kicked a third in the behind so hard the hefty fellow staggered forward, bringing down two more in a tangle. This was enough to bring him to the attention of Lear's men. They turned, startled as this unexpected force, whose ferocity made it seem much larger than it was, swept into them. The defense they put up was feeble at best. Striking to right and left, Cowlight quickly cut a pathway through them to the dolmen and leaped atop it. Finn, who had watched his coming with some amazement, made no move to hamper this unexpected reinforcement, and Cowlight moved to his side. Lear's men, thrown into confusion by the surprise attack, and faced now with two fierce warriors upon the stone, hesitated in their assault. "You can't know how glad I am to see ya," the dark warrior said, beaming with elation. "Are ya?" Finn said in a quizzical way. "Of course," Cowlight said, looking a bit surprised at his response. "But look, throw down those bits of iron there. Take these. I have carried them long enough for you." He slipped off the Manan Luin and the storm shield, handing them to Finn. Astonished, the fair warrior dropped his battered weapons to take the new ones. "Why should you give me these?" he asked. "Why not?" Cowlight replied, giving him a most peculiar look at this time. He expected him to recognize the weapons, and he didn't. "They're yours, aren't they? And it's my guess you're going to have need of them." This was far from an understatement. For now, Lear, outraged by the craven behavior of his men, was ranting at them to go on. "Get out to them, you cowards," he cried. "Why are you delaying? They are only two." Several of the warriors gave him looks which said clearly that only was not the word they would have applied. Still, they went, trying to swarm up onto the stones from all sides at once. And the fight began again in earnest. But the hapless warriors of Lear had no chance at all now. Finn and Cowlight moved back to back, shifting about to face any attack so swiftly and so agilely they might have been one being. Yep. The sword of Cowlight flashed out, striking down man after man. And in the hand of Finn, the Mac An Luin, a wielder of great carnage, while the storm shield boomed out like thunder when it was struck. This is a fight, This is a fight, Cowlight said exuberantly. Ah, but it's fine to be together like this again. Just like it used to be. Finn cast a questioning glance toward him at that, but was too heavily engaged to make reply. The pair battled on, apparently inexhaustible, devastating all those who came in around them. The warriors of Lear, for all their chieftain's exhortations, were growing reluctant to clamber up onto the stones. Finally, Lear himself, livid from rage and humiliation, stalked up below the dolmen and shouted up to Finn. Insolent whelp, I'll take this no longer. He's going to knock the stones over. Try watch. See how you fare against the blade of Lear. Okay, so he challenged him. I figured that would be the other one. That beefy fellow seems a bit angry, Cowlight observed. Is he challenging you? Is he challenging you? He is. He is, Finn answered. And I'll be most happy to finally oblige him. He hopped down from the dolmen before the chieftain. The other warriors drew back to give them a wide fighting stance. White berth, yeah. Lear did not delay, charging in at Finn like a maddened bull. Quickly, it became clear how he had gained and held the leadership of his band of savage warriors. The massive chieftain was neither a scrupulous nor a subtle fighter, making up for his lesser agility with a direct, powerful, and ruthless attack. He used his heavy body along with his weapon, slamming into Finn, knocking him back and pounding upon him, hammering at him with shield and sword as if he were a smith and the young captain an ingot of soft iron beneath his maul. But it was only for an instant that this tactic worked upon Finn. He retreated until his back came against the hard stone edge of the dolmen's cap. There, he recovered, altering his own tactics to match his opponent's, and the fight grew even. Take a drink. Hail victory. For a time, they battled toe to toe, exchanging massive blows, often locked together in brief contests of pure physical strength. But even the chieftain's superior bulk could now gain him no advantage over the sinewy and determined Finn. Finally, Lear's anger and frustration drove him to rashness. He launched himself straight forward, smashing Finn's sword and shield aside with his own and throwing his body against the young warrior. Finn rebounded from the outthrust boulder of Lear's chest, staggered, and dropped to one knee. Lear lifted his sword to strike at Finn's head, but Finn was quicker. The slender but deadly blade of Mac-an-Luin shot out, thrusting into the chieftain's side. Though not fatal, it was a serious wound, and quite enough to do for Lear. He grunted, staggered back, and fell heavily, crashing to the ground. Okay, don't get lost. At the fall of their chieftain, the men of Lear stopped their fighting at once. Having lost the only force that was still keeping them to it, they quickly pulled back from the remnant of the sons of Midheer and from Finn and Cowlight. Several of them, with great difficulty, scooped up the unconscious man and bore him away, staggering beneath his weight. Others gathered the rest of the fallen, and they retreated across the field. As they hastily departed, a beaming Cowlight turned to his comrade. Well, we surely took proper care of that, he said, whoever they were. I thank you for your help and the weapons, stranger, Finn said graciously. He held the Mac-an-Luin out toward him. But I should return these to you now. Cowlight looked in bewilderment from the sword to Finn. Stranger, he said. What is it you're saying? What kind of game are you playing? You know me. Finn shook his head. I'm sorry, he said frankly. I don't. Cowlight could only stare in disbelief. The slender fingers strummed a light, soothing, and pleasant tune. Okay, so now it's changing. Okay, so that's Canoe de Royal. The slender fingers strummed a light, soothing, and pleasant tune, its notes filling the place, seeming to impart an atmosphere including the fragrance of a soft spring morning. Canoe de Royal was the player, sat in Morin's seat near the central fire of the house and strummed upon her harp in a casual, almost absent way. Beside him, on the hearth, sat a brooding cowlight while the dogs lay on the floor at his feet. The eyes of all four were fixed searchingly, curiously upon their comrade. Finn was moving about the room in company with Dawn and the physician Luibra, seeing to the wounds of the brothers. Morin and her sisters were busy too in the administering, but the gaze of the red-haired girl kept straying to these strangers as she worked. She noted the direction of their gazes, and her face wore a troubled frown. And you say he had no memory of you at all? Canute Royal asked Cowlight as he played. Cowlight shook his head irritably. No, he was pleasant, but he treated me like a stranger, and the hounds as well. His own hounds? Raised from pups? We that rescued him 100 times? Well, he does look much the leaner, as you do, the harper said thoughtfully, as he seems a good bit older as well, although the beard's a part of that. Still, there's no denying it's him. Couldn't you find out anything else? I really hadn't the time to talk more, had I? Cowlight retorted impatiently. Since the battle, he's been all, a bustle, bringing the wounded here and seeing to them as if he were their own mother. Not a word to us, not so much as a look at us. Easy, Cowlight, Canute de Royal said. They've had a hard time by the look of it. Let them see to their needs now. We're in no hurry. Relax. Listen to the music. Never mind that, Cowlight said sharply. I only want to know what's wrong with Finn. The examinations completed and the physician now dealing with cures, Dawn and Finn left the others and crossed the room to the new arrivals. The girl, too, left her work and followed along, clearly with some anxiety. As Finn reached them, the two hounds rose and moved eagerly to him. He stopped to pat their heads and scratch their necks in a show of friendship that seemed quite unconscious. It was Dawn who first addressed the harper. Your music has a most soothing effect upon my brothers. It seems to ease their pain. Most are asleep. It's a fine harp, Canute Royal said, caressing it lovingly and then setting it down beside the chair. My talent is a modest one. I'm glad to be of help. It's a music with magic in it, certainly. The son of Mid here went on. And yourself, you're the she. Are you not? I was, the little man acknowledged, Canute Royal. My name. Of course, the other said with the light of a dawning understanding. But it's more than a modest talent you're said to have. I've heard great tales of the little nut, whose music can charm the sun out of a stormy sky. It may have been so once, he said and shrugged. But I fear much of my skill has been lost to me. You're most admired by my family, Dawn told him, sincerely. You chose to leave the safety of a Cid and brave the wrath of the Day Denons to live in the outer world? You are most welcome here, for it's a spirit like our own that you have. Is it? He said. And just who are you? Why were the children of Mid here? Dawn announced, with a ringing note of pride. We are the children of Mid here. Are you now? Canoe de Royal said with interest. Well, and I should have guessed as much. I've heard of you as well, but I thought that you had surely been destroyed by now. Not quite. Nearly, but for this one. Dawn put a hand to Finn's shoulder. He came from nowhere and gave new heart to us. I'm sorry not to talk to you before. Finn now put in. Don't think that the desire hasn't been burning in me. It's just that my duty to these people was of the first importance. Indeed. It's been the only thing of importance to me lately. I have a responsibility here, no matter what my need to know about myself, and had to be seen, and it had to be seen to first. We understand, lad, Canoe de Royal said, casting a meaningful look at the Dark Warrior. Don't we, Cowlight? That we do, I suppose. Cowlight grudgingly agreed. But what do you mean, the only thing? Are you saying you have no memory of anything else? Not even of Sub. There was a strange flicker as the pain that crossed the young warrior's face at the name. He frowned, concentrating. Then he shook his head violently. No, he said. I don't think so. I have a faint image of a woman. I have had the same one before, but I've had many visions. Dreams, more like. He looked closely at Cowlight, his expression clearing a little. His expression clearing a little. They have had you in them, I faintly recall. So I must know you. And there's no denying these hounds know me. They were leaning against him now, heads back and eyes closed in utter rapture as he patted them. You must think harder. You must think harder, Cowlight said with force. They are your own two hounds, Bron and Skilon. The Harper and I are your oldest friends. I am Cowlight. Finn looked from one to the other again, more searchingly. Then he sighed in frustration. I'm sorry. I just don't know. You must tell me who I am. Cowlight gave the little man a look askance. Canoe de Royal shrugged. We may as well tell him. All right, then, Cowlight said. He moved up to Finn. He placed a hand on each of his comrade's shoulders, gripping it firmly, holding Finn at arm's length. He met his eyes fixedly. Listen to me carefully, he said in a very determined way. Think. Remember, you are Finn, son of Coombe Hall, chieftain of the Bashin clan, leader of the Fionn clans of Leinster, captain of the Fianna of all Ireland. The girl gave a gasp that blended astonishment with dismay. Her brother raised his eyebrows in a sign of his own rather more restrained surprise. Finn Macomhole, he exclaimed. Then he shrugged, adding in a casual tone, well, I knew he was no ordinary mortal. But through the name was recognized by the others. Finn himself still looked quite blank. I am sorry, he told Cowlight sincerely, but I've no memory of any of these things. You have to remember, Cowlight said, giving Finn a little shake in frustration, as if to jar him to it. Remember Om Huin, your struggle against Tog, the battle of the White Strand. Remember Sob, remember the Dark Druid. It was he put this spell upon you. You have to overcome it to rescue Sob. Finn struggled, clearly in pain, But then he shook his head defeatedly. Cowlight turned away in frustration. I give up, he said. Whatever magic is holding him surely has its grip upon him. What happened to me? Finn asked. Why have I forgotten my life? That we don't really know, Canute Royal explained. But we're fairly certain it was a spell put upon you. And we think it was in a lake. I do remember another woman, Finn said. A fair-haired woman who somehow became dark. She said she was helping me, but she tried to kill me. It's all confused in my mind, like a long nightmare. A woman, was it? Said Cowlight. Well, we guessed as much. If this is some magic, shouldn't there be a way to counter it? Asked Don. He looked to the physician, Louibra. You'd be the best to know. The young healer who had been listening to this discussion as he worked now came over to them. Well, that's a bit tricky, he said. My own skills are with the body, not the mind. It's a more delicate thing that ointments and tonics can't reach. Still, there might be some way. Could be dangerous, Canute Royal told him. We think it was Firdorsh did this enchantment. The Dark Druid, Louibra breathed, clearly impressed. He looked at Finn. My young fellow, you do manage to acquire some interesting enemies. Well then, I agree that it would be dangerous indeed. Without knowing what magic he used, we might do more damage than good. There must be some way, Cowlight growled impatiently. We can't leave Finn without his past. Are you certain? Canute Royal said. Don't be a bloody fool, the Dark Warrior shot back. Don's brother Aid came into the house then and rushed immediately to them. Dawn, he said breathlessly, a messenger's brought word from Lear. So, he survived, Finn said. Worse luck for us, Dawn said. What does the blackguard want? Revenge, it seems. He's more outraged than ever, sorely wounded, but that only seems to have aggravated him more. I'm sure it has, said Louibra, clearly amused, especially without me to heal him. He says this isn't ended, Aid reported. For these new insults to him, he will go to Bode Durg himself this time, the High King of Ireland, he says. He will bring the whole of the Danons upon us to exact his due. Don looked from Aid around at the others, his gaze ending upon Finn. Well, my friend, he asked, just what do we do now? End of that chapter. Chapter 23, Remembrance. Have a drink. The other one was only 9 pages. All right. Read as long as I can. I think I may just have an idea, Finn, Canute Royal said. Dropped down from the chair and moved up before the fair warrior. It may not work, but then anything, said Finn. The agony of not knowing is maddening. Well, may seem a bit strange to you, but you have to put your thumb into your mouth. Salmon of wisdom. My thumb? Finn repeated as if he hadn't rightly heard. Of course, Cowlight exclaimed. The thumb. What fools, we were not to think of it. One of us did think of it. Canute Royal cattily pointed out. Finn had lifted his hands and was staring at both his thumbs in a confused way. My thumbs? He said again. What power could they have? Just your right one, the harper told him. You see, Finn? There was a enchantment put upon it. You burned it upon a magic fish of knowledge. A fish of knowledge? Ah, Finn said, giving the little man a most dubious look. Get away. I think it's a tale you're telling me now. It is not, Cowlight put in supportively. When you burned your thumb, you plunged it into your mouth to cool it. Ever since then, you've only had to put it in again when you need knowledge. Tears in his eyes, Canoe Royal released Finn's hand and stepped back. Finn slowly lifted the hand, fist tightly closed, thumb thrust out. He straightened, body tensing as he prepared himself for this. The men watched him expectantly. Morin's look was anxious. He slipped the thumb into his mouth, holding it there in a contemplative way. Then his head dropped down slowly, back. His eyes closed, and he grew suddenly taut with strain as if something had seized him. Within the darkness of his mind, images were beginning to develop. Flickering streamers of light began shooting out toward him from the void ahead. They grew steadier, stronger, brighter, widening into streams, into floods, taking on color, form, and movement. Then, he was within a geyser of images flowing together, enveloping him, catching him up, and carrying him along. The events of his life rushed past. His lonely childhood in the glens, meeting the little nut and Cowlight, winning his father's place, battles and hunts and music and blood and women's faces, armored giants, strange creatures, haunted woods, mist-shrouded mountains and stormy seas, and sunlit meadows blurring together in a torrent that surged over him. His body was vibrating, jerking as if the stream of impressions were a physical one beating against him. He grew tauter, his body so strained it seemed to near collapse. The others watched, their looks growing more concerned with the obvious heightening of his torture. Inside Finn's mind, the stream moved yet faster, in images shooting past like continuous lightning strokes, yet still all clear, each recognizable. The memories were recent now. The chasing of the fawn, the dark druid, his search, the winter, the spring, the forest, and the lake, the woman in the waters closing over his head, the oblivion. The end came in a final burst of light that exploded about him, leaving him in a tingling blackness. His body jerked a last time as the end came. Then he stood motionless for a moment, head still thrown back. Finally, slowing, pulled the thumb out, letting his arm drop limply to his side. The others leaned forward, breaths held, waiting, expressions fearful and hopeful at once. His eyes opened. He looked at them, but his eyes didn't seem to see them anymore. Instead, they were fixed on something beyond them, and a vast despair, a vast sorrow came into his face. He opened his mouth and voiced a cry of great agony, all spoken in a single word. Sob! Then, his energy drained by the ordeal, he staggered. Cowlight and Dawn moved in and caught him before he fell, easing him down onto a bench. He looked up and saw the dark warrior grasping his arms. Finn leaned toward him, his voice broken, tears welling in his eyes. Cowlight, my friend, what's happened? Where have I been? And Sob, what about Sob? He shook his head violently. Oh, Danu, the pain. I can't bear it. Cowlight moved forward, cradling his friend's head as he would that of a stricken child. It's all right, Finn. He soothed. It's come too fast. Be easy. It will be all right. But his words seemed to do little to console the anguished man. He sat with head hung forward, body sagging, shoulders shaking with emotions welling uncontrollably within him, as if he had been overwhelmed and utterly shattered by the massive inrush of awful knowledge. His eyes stared ahead of him, seeing nothing but the images of his past, which still glowed there. Those standing about him, watching him, their faces mirroring their own fears, clearly expressing a single question. Had the shock of the revelations been too much for Finn? Murin especially watched with apprehension, her eyes brimming with tears and sympathy for him. Finn, Canute Royal said with intensity, leaning toward the young man. You must fight your feelings, lad. You must get control of them. But it may be he can't, the physician put in darkly. The magic he battles is very powerful. Maybe his mind. No, Calais said fiercely. No magic can defeat him. That I'll not allow. He bent down now, speaking sharply, almost angrily to his friend. Finn, you have to come to your senses and quickly if Sob is to be found. It's you who must do it. These words had an immediate effect upon Finn. His shuddering stopped. He drew himself upward, and his gaze lifted again to the determined face of Cowlight. He seemed to draw even more new strength there, recovering further, visibly taking control of himself, pulling erect, his face setting into firm lines. Yes, he said, with recovering vigor. I have to find her, Cowlight. I have to. He jumped to his feet. We must go on, and quickly. All these days lost. All these days the Druid has had her. We must hurry. Galvanized by the restored obsession, he stepped away, moving with a nervous energy as he took up the storm shield. He seemed totally oblivious to the others now. You brought me my weapons too, he said to Cowlight. Good friend. I thought I'd lost them. No one else had spoken through any of this, but now, as Finn slipped the shield onto his arm, his gaze fell upon their watching faces. He looked round the room at the wounded men. He looked back to Dawn and then to Murin. Something seemed to strike him. His expression changed as if a light of logic, of realization was striking through the blinding darkness of his obsession. The madness faded from his eyes, replaced by the clear look of understanding. No, he said, dropping the shield. I can't leave. Things are not finished here. He looked round at them again, this time contritely. I'm sorry, all of you. I can see now that I've been mad for a time. Too long a time. And I'm not meaning the loss of my memory. No. In a way, that's been my cure. Losing my past has made me see the truth. There are problems greater than my own. But Sob, Cowlight began. Of course, I must try to find Sob, Finn interrupted. But I can't leave so many others to suffer, and she'd not want me to. Do you see, Cowlight? I thought that what made me want to serve others first was outside me, but it's not. It's in me. It is me. I can't walk away from these people now. They've become my family. I have to help them. There is nothing you can do to help us, Finn MacCombhall Don said stoically. That is your fight to be finished by us. You've never had a part in it, so leave us now and regain your life. No, Finn said with determination. I will not see you destroyed. I will help you. Help us? How? Even you can't fight all the Daedenons. It will be thousands who come against us now. Then I will bring all the Fianna here to fight for you, he said. The Fianna, said Don. Can you do that? If I can't, he vowed, then I'll return here alone to face the Daedenons with you. That I promise. Turn to Cowlight. We must go to Huin quickly, he said. I must host the Fians. Well, if that's what you wish, Cowlight said with a certain hesitation. There might just be a few problems. Well, we'll talk about it on the way, Finn said briskly. No time can be lost. Well then, we have some good horses, the Dark Warrior said. Oh, the little nut got them. Ah, bless Canoe de Royal, Finn exclaimed. He looked about for the harper and realized that while the talk was going on, the little man had been quietly stealing toward the door. Wait, Finn cried, moving after him. My little nut, where are you going? I've done all I can do for you, he replied, avoiding the other's eyes. I told Cowlight I'd not let you down again, and maybe what I've done has made me feel better. But I know that it can't make up for the great wrong I've done you. You said you meant never to see me again, and so I'll leave you now. My friend, Finn said in distress, dropping down, holding the little man to him in a great hug. Please forgive me for what I said to you. The madness is gone from me, and taken my hatred of you as well. I know now I can't blame you for what happened. I understand how the Dark Druid tricked Sob. You couldn't have saved her. You've not failed me. It's you who have to forgive me. He held the man out and fixed him with a most earnest gaze. Will you tell me that you do? Canoe Royal hugged him in return. And why would I not? He said with great gladness. Though it's more than I deserve. Finn released him and rose, an arm still about the little man, turning to smile at Cowlight. So, we are three again, he said. We'll ride for Huin at once. Look to dawn. How long do you think we have until the Daedenons come? Lear must go to Bruna Boyne to convince Bod Durg and the leaders of the Daedenons to act against us, said Dawn. There may be some argument, but the High King's resentment of us is strong. In the end, they will host. We have a few days, perhaps, no more. Long enough to return to Huin, raise the peons, and march them here, Finn said with great spirit. I'll match the speed of our fighting men against any in the world, even those of the Sidhe. Cowlight and the little nut exchanged a troubled look. Oh, Finn, Cowlight ventured reluctantly. Raising the Fians may not be quite so easy a task. I didn't like saying this before. With your recent illness and all. But the clans may not be so eager to follow you now. After all that's happened. Then I'll convince them, Finn proclaimed with confidence. But we must start at once. He took up his shield and turned to Dawn. I will come back, he said determinedly. Never doubt it. With that, he led his two comrades and the pair of his hounds from the house. Dawn, Luibra, and other of the Midhere family followed them out and watched them move swiftly down the slope to the horses, tethered at its base. Do you think he'll come back, or will he be lost? The healer asked. He will come back, I think, Don answered. He has proven himself a man true to his word. But if he brings no help, it will make no difference. We'll all die together here. Finn may come back, Morin said, looking after Finn with a great sadness. But to me, my An Luan is already lost. The little bearers straining more than a bit for their load, called Lear through the opening into the immense cavern. The interior of the Cid was a cheery and well-lighted place, bright, with many tapestries, richly textured, with metal and wood and glass appointments of all kinds. About a blazing central fire was a ring of tables. Here sat a number of slender, handsomely featured men, all quite fair, all with long hair and light, shining eyes. They were watching with a great deal of amusement a pair of other men who were wrestling with a complex contraption involving some 24 cauldrons, and as many spits, tangled lengths of chain, scores of pulleys, levers, axles, wheels, ropes, and rods. One of the two men was short and square of build, but with unnaturally long arms as hard and sinewy as knotted roots of some ancient tree. He was leather aproned. The bare flesh of his arms and legs soot blackened. His face so dark, his eyes were like hot coals blazing from a forge. The other was a huge bear of a man with thick bowed legs, muscled arms, and a barrel chest. His face was rugged and weathered to a ruddy hue, though not as black as his working mate. He was still very grimy and sweaty from his labors. Just now his massive body was set, straining with the effort, as he lifted a wooden wagon-like affair that held all the cauldrons. The load seemed greater than a dozen men should have been able to more than budge, but he held one end of it clear of the floor while the smaller man rolled a set of iron wheels joined by a thick axle underneath it. Be certain to keep it up while I set them, the one beneath said. I want no part of myself flattened in this. Just be quick about it, Koibnu, the other said through gritted teeth. Can't you fit it in? It was you designed the thing, shot back the other. He forced the axle into grooves beneath the wagon with a smack of his huge mallet. Then he began a quick crawl out to safety. I think that between the pair of you, you'll manage to see that the thing never works, Dogda, said one of the young watchers, grinning. You've been struggling at it for days now. Keep quiet, you. The large man he had called Dogda returned in a warning growl. It's a very great thing I've done. If you knew what it was, teased another observer. Angered, Dagda let the wagon drop, one of its new set of wheels nearly crushing the foot of Goibnu, who yelped and jumped clear as it crashed down and wheeled toward the offender. 3 times 9 cauldrons will this cooking oven have, he thundered. And 3 times 9 spits as well. The mechanism will turn them all about the fire with the quickness of a stream and lift them from the cinders to the height of the roof to keep them always in the flame. And without more than a single man to be tending them, he strode closer to loom over the other man. And when have you ever had an idea in your head, you useless parasite? Be easy, father, said a lean, grave-faced man with silver blue eyes, lifting a calming hand. We know what it is, but you have spent a great deal of time and effort on it. And just what else is there to do? The big man said. Stand about like the lot of you. That's not a life for me or for the smith. He looked to the black-faced man. Right, Goibnu. Right, I suppose, the other said with some doubt, examining him nearly squashed foot for damage. Well, let's not be larking about then, the Dagda said brusquely. Back to it. The smith shot him a nasty look, grumbled, but fell to as the Dagda took hold of the wooden cart again. Now if you'll just lift it here, Goibnu suggested, taking up another set of axle and wheels. As they resumed work, one of the watching men glanced round to note Lear, who had now been carried up close behind their tables. Say, look here, he said, calling the attention of the other to the wounded chieftain. By good Danu herself, said the one called Bod Durg. What's happened to you, Lear? The sons of Mid here happened to me, stormed Lear, and I want my revenge for it. The bearers carried him around the tables, and with expressions of great relief, set him down between the group and the working pair. Goibnu and Dagda were paying little attention to this. Finishing with placing the wheels beneath the cart, they were now trying to attach chains to the cauldron's handles. Calm yourself, Bod Durg said soothingly. What are you saying? I've been outraged, humiliated, the chieftain roared. Doubly outraged, triply. Hold on, Lear, the other replied. You swore to me that you'd bring them to surrender, and without further loss of their lives, not start your own war with them. And I would have, but they killed my bird, my finest bird created by magic of the Blessed Isles, and the hand of our own smith, Goibnu, there, himself. What? Said Goibnu, stopping his wrestling with a pair of metal levers to look toward them in outrage. My bird of flaming tail? Took me 2 full seasons for the crafting of that. Well, it's gone now, Lear said ruefully. And when I demanded satisfaction for the loss, they refused. They defied us. They dared to challenge us. From the looks of you, they did more than challenge, one of the company pointed out. And that's another thing, Lear added. They even stole Luibra from me. I had to go wounded while their wounds were healed by my own physician. This drew some sniggering from the men and an open guffaw from the Dagda. Ha! Lear glared around at them. So they kicked you soundly in the backside, did they, Lear? The Dagda put in, trying to force a cauldron into position in a harness. Well, I'd not say you didn't need it. A braggart like you, and after proclaiming you'd bring the mid-haters to heel. But they've used unfair means, Lear protested. They've been joined by outsiders, great warriors. One of them is like none I've ever seen. I think he uses some kind of magic. His skills are too unbelievable without it. They must surely be a powerful lot if they can make the difference between your host and the pitiful remnant of the Sons of Mid here, commented Bod Durg. The Dagda, losing patience both with the complex tangle that had ensnared him and with the conversation, heaved the mass of chains down on the floor with a great clatter and reverberated through the room. He strode from the jumble of his vast machinery and stalked over to the wounded chieftain. For all these years, you've been the arm of punishment for the Daedonons. And for all the same, I've watched you use the station to play bully. It's always galled me, though I've said nothing about it. But now, I'm glad to know you've gotten your proper comeuppance. That's a fine way to talk to me, Lear complained, after what I've done to keep the Daedonon's laws. After what I've suffered at the hands of these rebels. Rebels, Dogda repeated scornfully. That's your name for them, not mine. I've always been against this war upon them. Let them go and live where they like. That's my feeling. And it's the feeling of others, too. You've no choice in this, Lear blustered defensively. There's no pitiful remnant who can be ignored now. They are strong and defiant, and they might grow stronger. Outside warriors have joined them. Who knows how many might come? They have put themselves in league with powerful forces. I can tell you, they'll never submit now. Their rebellion will become greater. That can't be allowed. I say finish them quickly before this becomes even more bloody. Durg sighed, looking to Dagda, trying to manipulate. I'm afraid he's right, Father. We can't tolerate this. It's not a matter of their freedom. Defiance like this cannot be allowed. My son, if you mean to call another hosting of the She and bring all the Daedonon might upon this one small clan, you are a fool, the Dagda said with vehemence. I'll have nothing to do with it. I'm sorry for your feeling, Father, Durg told him. But if they're let to succeed in this, others may defy our laws as well. They've had their final chance to surrender, and they've refused. I've tried to settle the feud without more bloodshed, as you wished. That attempt failed. Now it must be finished in my way. Looked round at the others. We will be calling a meeting of the kings of all the She. If they are agreed, we will host. And then what will you do? Lear asked him eagerly. Then, said Durg reluctantly, they must submit. Or what? Or be destroyed. That's the end of that. And then moves to book 3, the Druid's Lair, and that will start tomorrow, most likely. The Druid's Lair, book 3. See? Big page. Right. Okay. Alrighty. Awesomeness. That was cool. Oh, yeah. What should we do? Well, right? Hey, we'll grind it quick. Well, maybe my friends remember who I am. My people, bring me back to a madness far away. But I remember I remember which way to go. My head on. If I'm gonna find a stay, find my wife and child, pouring rain. Yeah, winter, spring, or fall, no matter how long it takes, I'll find what I need. Gonna find love, but how long it takes. Long, long way. Well, the BobCat little summer sea, it's all forgiven now. Got your head up from the table and the bottle sat down, but you picked up the harp and beat on the crown. But you say no. You're one of the strongest warriors ever seen. True-hearted all the way. True-hearted all the way. True-hearted all the way. It's easy on the way, you know. Easy on the way, you know. Easy on the way, you don't. Back on the trail it's going on back to reclaim the crown. The captain who's gonna sail around. Take him now. It'd be a raging torrent in the eye of the storm. With a thundering voice calls away. With a thundering heart Finally, I remember who I am. Folks will never leave, and I'll never fall away yet. Fall away. Something more to stay. Easy on the you stay. It's gonna go straight, one battle at a time. But honor is honor, and a promise is an oath to stay. Not in an ancient day, blazing fire in a man's heart. But no, Thank you. Bit of time to retune, and continue the reading challenge, which I am here now. Look at how thin that is. That's how much is left. So that's awesome. All right. And continue on. Yes, make it happen. Oh, thank you.